Thank you for having us tonight. My name's Jim, and this is my wife, Rachelle. We are the directors of Bridge House Ministry. Bridge House Ministry is a three transitional homes for men and our women coming out of the background of addictions, helping them transition from their life of a mess into a life serving God and chasing their sobriety. Before we do our talk about the house, it always helps us and hopefully helps you guys to understand our background. So we like to tell a little bit about ourselves first to let you know where we've come from. Once again, my name is Jim. I spent 30 years in active addiction. I was once a hopeless dope addict, and now I'm a dopeless hope addict. So, and I believe that God rescued me from that. One of the things I like to focus on when I'm talking about my past is the wreckage I left behind, because it helps people understand what God's done with that. I have three specific areas of my life that I really messed up. One is I entered addiction at the age of 14. I started drinking at the age of 14, blacked out the first time I drank, and that was pretty much how I spent for 30 years. So God got a hold of me finally at the age of 44. So from the age of 14 to 44, I was in full-blown addiction, but I was still what they consider functioning. I ended up getting a scholarship, an engineering scholarship to Rolla, University of Missouri Rolla. It was UMR then. Went down there for a year and a half. The third semester down there, the alcohol got a hold of me, and I ended up leaving. I ended up going to SIU in Edwardsville and got a degree in broadcast journalism, so I became a reporter at two different TV stations, one in Fort Myers Beach, Fort Myers, Florida, WEVU, and I worked at KMIZ in Columbia. Alcohol again. I was a promising young reporter, but I got drunk on the air, so alcohol took that. I allowed it to be taken from me. There's a theme here, if you'll notice. I ended up leaving. At that point, as far as being a reporter, they didn't have the rules and the laws that they have now. So other stations, I would send out my demo tape, and other stations would call and say, why is he not there with you? And they would just tell him he got drunk on the air. Well, when you're starting off your career in broadcasting, that's a no-no. If you're going in, if you're 50, 60, like Shannon with the Cardinals, you're eccentric then. But when you're starting off, you're just a drunk. So I couldn't get a job. I ended up becoming a truck driver, a CDL truck driver. I said there was a theme here. I ended up with 3 DWIs. The state of Missouri frowns upon that, so they took that little plastic thing out of my wallet and ended up actually giving me a bicycle. And so I ended up in Teen Challenge, and what helped me get there was a 14-year-old girl, my daughter. I was trying to discipline her at one point, and I still remember the words. I was trying to tell her what she was doing was wrong, and she looked me in the eyes and said, "Daddy, I have no respect for you at all." And it crushed me. So like a good addict, I ran. I went on a 3-day bender. I left St. Louis, headed to Mexico. I was going to drink myself to death. And I woke up in Kansas 3 days later, and I don't know if you know the map, but
he doesn't navigate the
I don't. But when I woke up in that hotel room out of a 3-day blackout, one of the things that I struggled with more than anything else was the concept of grace. I did not understand grace. As a man in this world, if I couldn't work for it, steal it, if I needed drugs, I could kick in your back door, sell your TV, and I could get what I needed. So when they told me it was a free gift, I couldn't understand it. I didn't understand it. Well, I woke up that morning in that hotel room, and I finally was flooded with the concept of an understanding of grace, the free gift. I got on my knees. I called a pastor that I had known for a long time. He ended up marrying us, performing our wedding ceremony, and said, "I'm ready to go to Teen Challenge." They'd been trying to get me in there from 2005 to 2011, and I wouldn't go. I had too much to lose. 2011, I called him and said, "Hey, I have nothing to lose now." So I'd lost it all. They got me in Teen Challenge. God got a hold of me. As I said earlier, one of the big things that I'm asked by all the guys in our houses is, I've made a lot of mistakes. How can God use my mistakes for His glory? The first one is me flunking out of Rolla At the age of 44, I entered the Missouri School of Ministry, Bereans, Global U, whatever it's called this week. And I ended up completing. I am licensed now with the Assemblies of God. I almost hate to say this, but I'm in northern Missouri. We were introduced at a church. We were introduced at a church in Columbia. Tracy Cook that introduced us. He said, normally the North and the South don't play well together, but these guys are crossing those lines. So that's our reputation. Addiction doesn't know any denomination, and it doesn't certainly know between North and South. We've got a house in southern Missouri. We've got 2 in northern Missouri. We've got plans to put them all over the state, so it doesn't matter to us. But we just got word yesterday that we have an interview on Sunday at 5 for my ordination through the assembly. So I've applied. So that's the first thing. Flunked out, now I'm a licensed, we're missionaries and all that. The other one, I said that I lost my driver's license. We were blessed the last 6 months of 2018 to actually ride a bicycle across America twice. We left to start this ministry. We were going to raise funds to open the houses, and what it ended up becoming was speaking in about 15 different churches about the stigma of addiction. It wasn't about us. It was just walking into churches. You'll hear her testimony in a second. It's drastically different than mine. Mine was street. It was whatever I could get a hold of. You'll hear from her what hers was. But we were able to reach so many people because of the difference and the similarities, if that makes any sense at all. And the third one was, I forgot what it was. Oh, when I graduated Teen Challenge, I had replaced all my addictions with a food addiction. And I was about 280 pounds. And I remember praying to God, what are we going to do? And he said, I'm going to give you a bicycle. And I laughed at God. Now fast forward a few years later, I'm riding across America. But one of the things that he also used was the degree in broadcast journalism. I didn't want to be in front of a camera again, but I really have a love for behind-the-scenes camera stuff. So he directed me to Faith Church in Sunset Hills, a mega church, TV church. I didn't want to go. I told God, no, I'm not going to go to this church. He kept directing me there, and he wasn't going to show me from the parking lot, but when I walked in, I saw the cameras, and I ended up running cameras for David Crank for about a year. And then there came a point in time where I needed more than what they were offering as far as the church. I needed to get into Acts and Romans and out of John 3:16. So I ended up back in the assemblies. But that was another thing that God used, the background and reporting, to help me regain a little confidence. And also, it was 8 miles from where I lived, 8 miles there and 8 miles back. If you know anything about High Ridge, it's called High Ridge because it's up on a high ridge. Wherever I went was downhill. Whenever I came home, I had to go uphill. And so the weight came off, and it directed us to where we wanted to go. So if anybody ever tells you that God will use all of your mistakes for his glory, if you let him, there's no doubt in my mind that he will. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm going to let you, Rachelle, talk.
Good evening. My name is Rachelle, and I'll just start off by saying I'm from Mississippi, so I have a little bit of a twang. So let's just get that out of the way. He speaks about my addiction being different. I was older. I was 38 years old, and I had a car wreck. And it triggered, I had been in remission from fibromyalgia and migraines. Well, it triggered it and started all over again. And so I ended up in pain management. And from pain management, I ended up addicted to pain pills. It was hard to tell me that I was an addict because I went to the doctor every week. I passed pill count. I passed drug test. I never bought off the street. I never forged a prescription. I'm a paralegal. I'm like straight down the rules. I didn't shop doctors. I didn't, buy off or borrow from friends or anything like that. My doctor was giving me enough to support the habit that it took a long time for people to convince me I had. In fact, it took my daughters who were adults and taking my grandchildren away from me. My grandchildren were a little over a year. My 2 daughters had baby boys 6 months apart, and they took that out of my life. So it didn't do any good. It just didn't hurt anything. I just kept going because it's legal. What I'm doing is legal. And so finally, I went to pain management for my weekly checkup. They put me on synthetic heroin, which is at that point in time was Opana. I'm not sure what it is now. And it made me hallucinate. For some reason, I had stayed with my mother that night, and I had a hallucination of a event that had taken place 2 months before. I was in a violent relationship. I was beat in the head with a Glock 40 and thrown in a ditch to die. How anyone found me on that little country road and got me to the hospital was all but God. In the midst of this, in 2003, I was the children's choir director for a small church in Mississippi, and my husband at the time, of 15 and a half years, had an affair with someone in the church, and I got extremely upset at God. So I walked away. I didn't stop believing. I was raised a Christian. I knew God. I just didn't want anything to do with him. If this is how he was going to reward me for serving him, then I didn't want anything to do with him. So over those 10 years, my life, I can look back now. I can see both his hand in my life saving it, but I can also see the mess. It just got worse. Each relationship got worse. Every time that I had to go to the doctor, something else was wrong. And so another medication, it just got worse and worse. So I was taking the new medication, I hallucinated, I tore down every piece of furniture in a bedroom and put it against doors, windows, everything else, and it took the fire department about 5.5 hours to get me out because I'm from Mississippi and I owned a gun and they didn't know if I had it or not. So I didn't, but they didn't know it. So when I came out, the local doctor at the emergency room was tired of seeing me. I had accidentally overdosed a couple of times. One of them was the night that they found me in the ditch. I had a fentanyl patch. I wore it here so that it could be visible. They missed it. They shaved my head to put staples in it, and they pumped me full of morphine, and it OD'd me. That night, I died, and it didn't matter. In fact, when I woke up and realized what had happened, I was mad. I didn't want to take my life, but I didn't want to live, if that makes sense. It was just, I was so miserable. So when they got me out, there was an ambulance waiting, and there was the local sheriff's department. And they were going to take me to the psych ward to be committed for 90 days as a harm to myself. And I said, nope, it's not going to work for me. And they said, then you're going to have to go to jail for disturbing the peace. So I get in the front seat of the car. I talk to the guy I graduated with. He never read me my rights. He never did anything. We go in. They book me in. They book me out. I'm grabbing my stuff to walk out. Phone rings, and they want me to sit down because the sheriff wants to talk to me. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with small towns. This seems like a really small town, but people can really buddy up to sheriffs and things. And he was a good friend of my mother. The only thing that bothered me about this conversation we were about to have is they put me in a lunacy cell. So they put me under suicide watch, which was odd. But the reason they did it is because they came in and told me they were going to detox me. They were bringing in a nurse, and they were going to detox me. I was coming off the drugs whether I wanted to or not. 6 or 7 pain pills, Xanax, benzos, all kinds of things that they just pulled. So those cells happened to be soundproof, so all of my screaming was doing no good. So I decided to start yelling at God, because he's always there. And so this was all his fault as far as I was concerned. And I broke down. I had nothing left in me. And I broke down on that cell floor, and I was just screaming, what do you want? What do you want? I don't have anything left. It took him years to lose everything. It took me 7 months. 7 months. I lost a job of 19 years, a trucking company, 2 houses, all of my family in 7 months. And I said, what do you want? I don't have anything else. What do you want? And I felt a warmth around me, and I heard him say, you, my child. And I went to sleep. 3 days later, I woke up completely sober and pain-free. God had delivered me. So I was asked, politely, I guess, by my family to go into treatment. And to punish them, I went to Russellville, Arkansas, which was 6 hours away from them, and spent 13 months in Teen Challenge. I went in completely surrendered. I spent every single day with Jesus from the time I got up to the time I went to bed and prayed myself to sleep every night. I did not realize you could have such a relationship as we can have. And I know that if it was not for Jesus, that today I wouldn't be standing here. I didn't have that many more hospital visits in me. I would be dead. So it led me to make a promise to God. I'll go anywhere you want me to go, and I'll do anything you want me to do. Careful about that. I ended up in St. Louis, Missouri, with all my family still in Mississippi. And he led me to recovery. And in this, he led us to Bridge House Ministry. We have a video I'd like to show you that tells a little bit about the house.
Drug addict since I was probably about 12, 13 years old. I've been a heroin addict for the past 22 years and currently getting ready to celebrate 6 months clean.
There's a tremendous need in our country today. All of us are aware of people with addiction. It is epidemic. The Bridge House is a transitional home for ladies coming out of addiction of all kinds.
The house was designed to help them become productive members of society again.
And to provide for them a community, a place where they can come and be safe.
It's very structured, and I think that coming out of addiction, we all need structure for a little while.
It's a known fact that 60 to 70% of someone in recovery's success is contingent on those that they surround themselves with.
And the Bridge House supplies them with the home and the housing that they need to get their lives back in order.
It's a good place to come. It's a good place to come to find Jesus, and it's a good place to come and learn how to live your life sober.
And so the vision of the Bridge House needs to be multiplied. It needs to be expanded.
There's opportunities to come alongside us and help us financially. There's opportunities to come alongside of us and just simply help with the repairs and maintenance of the housing that we have. There's opportunities to help mentor these ladies.
Our prayer would be that you would pray with us and that you would come to the decision to come alongside us, support the people that need this very Christ-centered treatment, and grow the Bridge House ministry.
The Women's House has been in existence for about 12 years. 500 to 600 women have come through its doors. Some make it, some don't, which is heartbreaking. But the main thing that I want to let you know is addiction does not discriminate. It does not matter your sex, if you're rich, if you're poor, if you grew up in it, if you've never been around it. It doesn't discriminate. If you're educated, it doesn't. And that's one thing that people need to understand. They need to understand that it's not to look down on people that are in addiction. They're struggling and working for they're fighting for their life. So the house is very, very structured, as she said on the video. They have things they have to do. Most of them are faith-based because my belief, and I try not to shove my beliefs down people's throats, but you need Jesus to be sober. That's just the only way it works. So.
we believe there's a difference between sobriety and recovery. You can be sober and not growing. In recovery, you're taking the chemical out, but you're also replacing that with something. And for us, it's God. It is God. Once it's replaced with God, and that's the Teen Challenge model. If you can shove enough God in that coffee cup, there's no room for anything else. That video has been in existence for about 5 years. Since that video was made, we have opened 2 more men's houses. That house is in St. Peters, Missouri. We opened a house in Woodson Terrace, which is near the airport. And then November, we opened a 3rd house also in St. Charles. So we have been in conversations with pastors all over the state. One of the things that we noticed when we were on the bicycle ride, did I mention the bicycle ride? I think I did. We spoke at about 15 different churches. 2 of the poorest churches we spoke in, one was in Prattville, Pennsylvania. The pastor started showing me statistics about the suicide rate in this little bitty town in the middle of Pennsylvania, and it was just unbelievable. Another one, we got to preach on an Indian reservation. And I remember the Indian reservation. It was a very poor community. I came from a background of alcohol, and half that room knew what I was talking about. When she came in from the background of opioids, the other half knew. The Native American population is destroyed and being just run over by addictions and stuff. So, and then the other one was Sonoma, California, the wine capital of the world. We're at a mega church, Sonoma Lighthouse Assembly of God, and the pastor took me aside and said, "You would not believe we could use one of these houses." So it doesn't matter, like she said, rich, poor, black, white, female, male. It really doesn't. If it gets its teeth in you, I was on the streets. I did whatever I could. She was the high-priced paralegal that had the businesses in this. So it just doesn't really matter. So as I said earlier, we've spoken with quite a few pastors. A pastor in Marshall, a pastor in Dixon, Pastor Luke and Festus. I mean, just on and on and on, where these houses, we want to multiply this vision. We are part of a U.S. missions project under Reach Missouri Network, Pastor Jerry Harris. And he put in one of his pamphlets one time that he wanted to do 10 kingdom initiatives. Well, we didn't realize he was talking about 10 different kingdom initiatives. We understood that to mean us. So that became our mantra. He wants 10 of them, we're going to have 10 houses. Well, we're on pace to have 10 houses by the end of the 20s. So by 2030, we hope to have 10 houses open. We've got 3 now. COVID kind of threw us for a loop, I'll be honest. And there were some other challenges. And let me rephrase it. There was other opportunities that we had to overcome to get that house open. The 3rd house kind of went, it was like, and it blew over. So we don't know what God's going to do with the next one, but we're excited to see. We are talking about a lot of different things, a family house and some other things. One thing that I want to point out, and we've seen so many, she mentioned earlier, some make it, some don't. We've seen so many people leave those houses changed. I told Pastor, we had dinner tonight. One of the highlights of this ministry for me was a guy telling me, his wife calling me in December, "I'm divorcing my husband, I'm kicking him out, he needs a place to go." So the man came into my house in January, he said, "I'm going to win my wife back." By April, they're back together. He's given his testimony at our Celebrate Recovery next Tuesday, and he's got 13 or 14 months sober. So, God is using these. I refer to Teen Challenge, and I use our house as the same thing. God saved my life. Teen Challenge was a tool that he used, but Teen Challenge was a cast that held my arm in place long enough for him to do the healing. Our houses work the exact same way. She mentioned it, we are faith-based and we are structured. Monday they're in Bible study. Depending on the house, either Tuesday or Friday they're in Celebrate Recovery. Wednesday they're in church. Sunday they're in church. They are required to do one other meeting. And then we have, it's one of the things that we noticed and the way we met was when we graduated Teen Challenge, we did not have people that we could have those deep spiritual conversations with. There's people in churches on Sunday. There are people that are on that level, but there's others that are just, they're not seeking at the same level that I was when I graduated. I couldn't find people to talk to and have those deep spiritual conversations. I started a website, a Facebook page, And we met on that Facebook page 512 miles away. That's written on the back of our rings, by the way. It says 512. But when we met, there was no chance that there would ever be a relationship. So we were on a level where, you know, when you go on that first date and you dress up and you slick your hair. I used to have hair. You slick your hair back and you look really good and you put yourself on your best behavior and all that. Well, we didn't have anything like that because we knew we'd never be able to. So we were being able to be honest and upfront and have those deep spiritual conversations. And then God closed that gap. As she likes to say, she lost the coin toss and ended up in Missouri. But it's one of those things that we both had friends, really close friends in Teen Challenge that fell. 14 months for me in a Jesus bubble, 13 months for her program. And they were getting out and they were falling, and we wanted to know why. What is going on? Well, they had to go back to the same job, the same friends, the same house. They got the same results. So God started planning the vision of transitional housing. We are not a sober living house. You can go into the Oxford House or some of these things and live there for 10 years if you want. That's not what we're about. We want to help you transition. If we could use the word halfway house, that's such a negative image when you mention that, but that's what we operate as. We want you to help you transition from where you were to where you're going. As they said on there, we want to duplicate that. We want to multiply it. Financially, if you guys, and the church here, thank you for that too, by the way. The church here already supports us, so that's great. We always throw this out there. If there's an individual that wants to support us, that wants to do it on the side, see us afterwards. We'll get you a pamphlet, however that looks. But nonetheless, we need your prayer, you know. And Pastor asked me to say something, or you know, lead us into prayer. But I do want to say something before we do that. I have seen in my own existence, in my own life, so many answered prayers. I have seen answered prayers for my wife. I have seen answered prayers within our houses. There is one in particular that I want to share, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I always do. One of the things that they do in Teen Challenge, we were both members of the choir. I can't sing, but they liked my testimony, so they let me stand in the back without a microphone, and then they let me give my testimony. So I got to go with the choir. I can't sing, I'm not going to lie. One of the things that they do is they send out, when the Teen Challenge, does Teen Challenge come to your church? Do they ever come here to share? Okay. One of the things that they do is they hand out prayer cards, okay? And the men or women sign their prayer cards and they turn them in. Well, as students at Teen Challenge, we would get these prayer cards and read them and pray over them for a week, and then they'd go back and the next people would get them. She's in Russellville, Arkansas. They broke into their prayer groups, and she's picking out her prayer cards. And it's her middle daughter praying, pray for my mom, she needs help. And she was already in Teen Challenge, and God had already answered that prayer. That prayer card was for her.
I had asked God, I felt guilty about leaving, even though my youngest child was 17 years old at the time, and she was in good hands, but I felt so guilty about being gone and working on me, even though that's what my family wanted. So I asked God, I said, please show me I'm doing the right thing. And that was that morning in prayer. And then at lunch, when we were praying over the prayer cards, the third card I picked up was my daughter's Robin. And it broke me for many reasons because I didn't realize how much I was hurting my family, how worried they were every time the phone rang. You know, every time I went to the hospital, whether or not I was going to live, whether I was going to come out, whether they were going to get a call that I was gone. And but it answered my prayer. God answered me that I was doing the right thing. So He does answer prayers.
Amen. And I just want to make sure you guys know that He never give up. There were so many people praying for me. There were so many seeds planted, especially between 2005 and 2011. I didn't understand them when the seeds were planted, but when I got into Teen Challenge in 2011, all those things made sense. So don't give up on them. Don't stop praying for them. As far as our houses, like I said, we want to do at least 7 more between now and the end of the 20s. So your prayers and anything else you can do would be awesome. So.